Welcome to our new episode of Speak Revenue. Remember, revenue is not a goal, it's a result. But a result of what? In this show, we turn our eyes from the input towards the output. We speak with revenue leaders and entrepreneurs about what works for them and what didn't. So, join me on my journey to uncover the root causes of success. Today, in my studio, I have a dear friend, I might say, Cameron Johnson. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Stephen, thank you for having me. Lovely to be back again and speaking with you. Amazing to see how everything's been going.
Cameron, we know each other for quite some time, but for the audience, real quick, who are you? What do you do? Who do you do it for? And what makes that whole thing so successful?
Yeah, cool. So my name's Cameron Johnson. I have a revenue. And over the years, I've been working as a sales consultant, professional, and having people come in to work with us, really kind of elevating the sales role that I come from, my background sales and customer success, account management into the US kind of terminology around revenue, chief revenue officer, revenue as a service, if you will. And you'll see from kind of background, like I specialize and have worked in cybersecurity for most of my career. I've worked in fintech with Stripe and open banking company backed by SoftBank and the like. And I've worked with Funnel in Martech and a few other companies. So it's really given me that experience and that depth and that kind of wide view of different industries to see what one industry is doing to what another industry is doing and seeing the maturity of those markets based around products or service-based businesses in that. So that's myself. And
I'd like to get back to the market, to the security market and security situation later in my questions, because I think there is some development that we are seeing in the last couple of years that might be interesting. Right now, for those who cannot see this, we are seeing Cameron in the office of Pentest people. It's white and green. And you're consulting Pentest people. Real quick, who is Pentest people? What do they do? And what do you do for them?
Pentest people that's what it says on the tin, right? They do pen testing, ethical hacking, everything which is very much service based around testing. I joined these guys when I first started my career and they built a company, sold it, and they've gone on a kind of similar journey, but I'd probably say 5x, 10x of what their journey was before.
For the
It is,
non-security people here, pen test has nothing to do with writing anything. They're not testing pens. They are
it's,
doing penetration testing. So they find the loops, the holes, the leaks and in your data system, in your IT system, and help you fix the open gates that most people have. Is that a way to
yeah.
describe it?
The vulnerabilities, the port, that's exactly it. If you think about, you've got the bad actors and the unethical hackers, and you've got the ethical hackers. These guys have the ethical ones, which is great. And on top of that, I think one thing that I was telling the industry, and especially the companies I was working with many years ago, when I was a lot more involved in cyber, was that testing is one thing, but you need to have a product and a portal or some sort of online digital service that takes all of the information in and then feeds it out to customers, because companies, and then they still do pen testing, they put it onto a PDF and then they send it across to a customer. Like, well, there's all this data that there in Word form should be going into a tool that can be used. So these guys have actually created a portal that all the scoping, all the testing, all the information and data is stored onto that portal. And then you can take those vulnerabilities and then ping them off through Jira and Slack, wherever you like, to then feed into your system. So you're getting that holistic service with a professional service and a product to back it up.
Because security is not a status, security is a process that you continuously
Yeah,
improve.
it'll never
With,
stop.
or it's like sales and your revenue process that you continuously improve. Great segue. What are you doing for them?
So at the moment, I'm helping them with, they're currently really, really good and 1,000 customers in their kind of SME market. From my, I branched out into the enterprise markets, banking, financial services. So helping them bring on customers back, but then also looking at like the function, how do they move them upstream from the SME customers to enterprise? What does that look like? Structural perspective as well.
How do you sell penetration testing. A bazillion questions come up. It requires certain trust. Why would anyone come on? I gotta pay you so you can hack me and then tell me how you did it. That's a hard sell. Walk me through the whole process. First of all, how long have this company been around? How many people?
So the company's been around about 7 years, I believe, 6, 7 years. We're moving on to about 100 people. So
that's not small anymore. You've been around for 7 years. Where do you go out and find people? Do you have an inbound motion? Do you pull, push, outbound? Step me through this.
There's a whole mixture that they have here. But if you look at the cybersecurity market, especially from a professional service perspective, it's always been very outbound driven, which has been great when I go into other industries like Stripe and Funnel, where they're like, okay, we're very inbound focused. Tell me how to do outbound. And they still do really heavy here. So they've got quite a big sales team that's very much outbound driven. They work with third parties who help bring leads in, but there's always a hunter mentality to go out and bring new business in. They do have a marketing function that does a lot of great work. So we're doing some podcasts. So there'll be some podcasts we're calling it Chat with a CISO that I'm running, where I'm talking to CISOs across UK, Europe, and hopefully go into the US soon, around like where they're going, what they're doing. A lot of the events they attend, so InfoSec, ICE, all those type of industry-based events is where they go to get the leads in.
I think for our listener, we have to explain CSO. A lot of people might actually think Chief Sales Officer, but you're talking Chief Security Officer.
Yeah, that's it. So a few years ago, GDPR and other kind of regulation, and a lot of testing, and that is done. And cyber sales, a lot of that is done through governance or regulation-driven requirements. So a few years ago, there was a rule that, okay, you need to have someone who is looking after security on the board, have a seat at the board. So in the C-suite, God, maybe 5-6 years ago, when I was doing this, that title didn't really exist. It was IT director, then it became information security manager, and then from there to a C-suite. So yeah, it's chief information security officer. Some companies, especially US, call it CSO, chief security officer, which kind of combines like the physical and digital security of the business.
Describe your ICP a little bit to me. At what size when you start to build out the chief information security officer or chief security officer and those structures? What type of maturity level, company size, age? Step me through this.
It's a very interesting question, because actually there's as we know from the fractional boom, there's a lot of companies that are hiring fractional leaders, no matter what they are. And actually the CISO is something that's become really popular over the years, because a lot of startups are having to go and do SOC 1, SOC 2, ISO 27001 accreditation. They're actually bringing in virtual CISOs. They may be there 1 or 2 days a week. But when you look at other companies, a lot of the people on the ICP that the guys here will be focusing on is very much the IT manager, IT security manager, sometimes the application security manager, someone who is more a kind of an operational level or kind of entry level, junior level manager within this function. But actually, a lot of my focus is on the C-suite, because a lot of my relationships from CISOs, and actually that's when you're looking at more mid-market and larger enterprise companies that have these leaders within the business that they focus on like a growth strategy for that business or a maturity strategy, because there's the security maturity curve, which goes a bit of a graph that goes from like very immature to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's different things you got to do on the way. A lot of these CISOs go in with a 18-month to 3 to 5 year plan. And then testing is as one part of that, but they deal with all of the cybersecurity tools.
Real quick, you're based in the UK. A lot of our listeners are based in the US. I'm currently based in Germany. We all have slightly different definition of what SMB mid-market enterprise is. Give us your definition real quick.
Yeah, so mid-market.
How do you define that?
We still use the old school traditional method of people-based. So I would say 1,000, couple of thousand. Is that the mid-market is based, maybe 500, couple of thousand, and then a couple of thousand plus is when you go into the enterprise. And then you have the multinationals that is kind of enterprise plus, if you will. So I would say mid-market upwards is where that role comes into play, where you actually are in charge of a function. A lot of my contacts are very much on the enterprise level, where they are part of businesses that are several thousand, or some of the banks that are 10 times that.
How a chief security officer of 1,000 people company, and I think geography is Europe, you're serving both markets?
US, Europe, there's opportunities in the Middle East as well, quite a bit at the moment. I don't really focus on anything outside of that.
I heard account-based before when you were listing all the things that you do. How do you approach a chief security officer of 1,000 FTE enterprise company?
SME level, they're not really like the top end of mid-market enterprise. Their focus is not really on CISO, it's more on the management. So their approach is get on the phone, calling through, dropping emails, sending LinkedIn messages, doing marketing campaigns, doing events, sponsoring different events, just getting the name and the brand out there. It is very much outbound driven. From my side of things, as you move more enterprise, I think it's a lot more network orientated. So utilizing the relationships you have and then doing great jobs and building case studies, then using that to then get into other groups or building communities of people, building something that is giving value to the audience rather than just the SME market is so high volume, so technical, take a lot of time, whereas more enterprise customers require a little bit more support. There's more complexity there. The conversation and the relationships are the ones that last many years, whereas the smaller businesses, they can churn, quite heavily. Because why you don't have to do a pen test every year with the same company, and there's value of kind of mixing it up companies each year. So actually, been that much difficult when you're on the enterprise companies where you use a lot of time going through the procurement process and you've used relationships to get you into these 3 to 5 year engagements. There's going to be a handful of you that are in there that are being rotated around. So that passing it on one to another is there, but actually the enterprise motion is still quite heavily traditional in that sense of network and relationship based. I think you're seeing a lot of companies, and what I'm trying to here as well is build communities.
Suppose I'm opening a pen test company tomorrow. You and I do the hacking, you do the sales work, or maybe vice versa, I don't know. But let's say we set out tomorrow. I want to be super hands-on here. How do I get to have that conversation with the right decision maker? How do I even get them on the phone or into a meeting? What drives them? And I like to think of go-to-market motions or marketing, if you will, or lead generation, that there are essentially just 4 ways of telling people what I have to offer. You can divide all people on the globe into people who know me and people who don't know me. There are no other people. And I can talk to people one-on-one like we do now, or I can talk to them one-to-many. That's when I post something on LinkedIn. And I like to separate everything that people do into those 4 types. So if I talked one-to-many to people that I don't know, then I'm doing paid ads, billboards on the street, TV commercials. That's one-to-many, with people I totally don't know and who don't know me. By the way, it just matters that they know you. You don't need to know them. As you grow and penetrate the market better, there are more people that know you. Then you can do cold calling, cold emailing. That's one-on-one with people who don't know me, else it wouldn't be cold.
Yeah.
Then you mentioned that you can post on LinkedIn and social media. That's one-to-many for people who know you, else they wouldn't see it. And then you can have this one-to-one conversation with somebody who knows you as a result of your content marketing, of you sponsoring a conference, for whatever reasons, however they got to know you, they come to a meeting, and this is where B2B deals are being closed. So we B2B people, we want this. We don't want the other 3. But they don't fall from that. When you start out, you maybe have some people who know you. This is founder sales. This is where founder sales starts. But you need to supply this quadrant consistently with people who know you. So you need to grow those relationships.
There's also
how do you go about
between the 2 as well? Sorry to jump over you. Like you've got the cold,
yeah, please.
You got the warm. But when I was working at Funnel.io, there was a big kind of there to try and go from very much inbound orientated. 5% of all deals were based around that to a more of an outbound motion. And it's actually taking that smaller step or that step into the gray, which is the warm, right? So it's actually, there's hot, there's cold, and there's warm in the middle, which is like utilizing the warm relationships that you have, or the relationship you're talking about, which is from the B2B kind of content perspective. People are on that journey that's starting to get nurtured and maybe doing some account-based marketing to them as well. They are in a position where super calls, they've never heard of you, they know you, or they know someone who knows you, or someone can reference you to them, or there's some sort of connect there. It's just not as hot as, hey, I've worked with you for the last 10 years. Do you want to work together again?
But if they know you, then you can influence what they know you for. And there are ways to do this: your website, your LinkedIn profile, and so forth. What are the activities that the Pentest people do to increase the amount of people who know them?
I think they're very like event driven. So they will be going to a lot of the events that are out there, and then using that as a tool to, one, get the brand out there, but also try and meet new people that don't know them. The people that do know them at the moment, it's about keeping those relationships. And when one person moves from one place to another, to continue that journey and continue working on those people. I'm not sure really covered what you were asking there, but
I'm getting my answers. I'm very, very content here. Okay, once they know you, once you have that conversation, how do they become customers? Do we have a qualification? Do you have an SDR qualification step, and then?
No. So if you think about the models, I like to really build pods, and I like to have the assembly flow, right? Where you either have a pod in different regions doing different things, or you have the assembly flow, you have the SDRs into sales. Within Pentest people as a business, and this is not all companies. I worked with companies before that had I built in the assembly line, because what they had at the time was just, and for the salespeople who were going out, and it's actually similar here. They have a bunch of salespeople who go out and they do the qualification. Yes, they have lead generation partners. Yes, they have marketing efforts. Yes, they do some content creation, podcasts, etc., to try and feed those leads in, and they work with data providers to get the information for the team to go up. But it is very much, they have a couple of guys who are SDR kind of entry level, but is the pathway into the next role. And that function as itself isn't a set function, which is something that is a suggestion that could help the business to get to the next stage of going from the traditional model of having a bunch of sales guys going out and doing referral, warm, hot, cold engagements. There's also a big channel part that covers maybe 25-30% of the revenue within the business here. They have a channel team that then go out and then manage relationships with a lot of different IT resellers, value-add resellers. Don't go to the disty level because the margin's too low, but it's the way that they are going to market to get those leads in. What they're doing here is they're using external support and marketing with a little bit of SDRs to then in, but then every salesperson or BDM within the business here has to find a way to source their leads. They'll get one or two. I think it's fair to say that is typical of the cybersecurity industry as a whole, unless you are a vendor and there's a few out there who've done some really great stuff. CrowdStrike quite recently, they owned InfoSec, paying about $1 million plus to have the full branding there. There's a company called FireEye a few years ago. They did massive marketing. Their inbound was insane. And their vendors, there's a lot of companies that are really, I think, they're doing quite well as well from that perspective. Like, it's just channel only, but they're pumping out a bunch of marketing, being at a lot of events, getting the brand there, which is very much inbound led, which means that obviously you need a really strong SDR team to be able to transfer those leads through a qualification process into an SQL that then goes to SQO. I think a lot of the professional service companies don't really have that set up. It is still quite a traditional model until you get to a certain size. And I feel like the company here is getting to the size that putting in the enterprise function and putting in an SDR function to then build out that assembly line makes it a lot more efficient and smooth for the customers to go through the journey rather than having the traditional sales approach.
Let's talk a little bit about the market. I think security, in recent years, I feel like we've gone through difficult times. There was COVID when everybody moved out from the corporate office to work from home. That's a security challenge because suddenly you're not on corporate Wi-Fi anymore. Everybody is at home, use maybe their private devices. Their kids play on the same laptop that they used to log into their company IT. So there is this challenge. Now we are faced directly. That wasn't really over when we were faced with the first large-scale land war in Europe. That is definitely also an info war and cyber war, has that part to it. What is your take on the security market as a whole? How is the threat and the situation different for a mid-sized company that has totally different things on their agenda right now. How can they still ignore this topic compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting question because I've been myself of cybersecurity for a couple of years as a consultant, focusing on fintech, martech, other industries. Most of my life has been in cyber, so I want to get out and explore. When I started my business just before COVID started, so actually I was working with a lot of the banks where they were like, okay, how are we going to do this? And it was absolutely fair because they'd have thousands of people in campuses or office blocks in London, trying to figure out how they secure the home, because that's just another. I think a lot of companies managed to get through that. But at that period of time, say about 4 or 5 years ago, the media was so ripe and so heavy on making the general public aware of what is happening when data breaches are coming out. And it was a massive thing. So many companies like this company got breached, this company got breached, this company got become a bit of a norm. So I think over time, what it's done is it's kind of helped us normalize. I think that time it was very much, okay, we got to get everything in place, like really need to secure, lock down everything. Chatting to the security leaders in the world through the podcast that I run, finding that actually a lot of that, not ambulance throwing money at things, is reduced, and it's more around risk management. And it's like, okay, some of the conversation I'm having with people, they're saying actually our CISO function may actually contract again. Everything's very cyclical. Our role may even actually contract back into a risk officer's role, because cyber and security and infrastructure or network security will move in its right places. From before, where it was like, invest, we don't want to be on the news. And if you're on the news, what we're going to do, then you invest in a PR company that helps you figure out how not to do what Corp did. And into the point now where it's like the market, because we're in a downturn, money's tight. A lot of companies are doing what they need to do. And actually, a lot of businesses want to do more from a cybersecurity perspective and data privacy perspective, and make sure they can look after people's data. But actually, the business and the board are now having that more of a conversation around what is the risk, what is the appetite for our business, on what are the risk levels. And it's down to those security leaders within the business to say, I'm comfortable with being a part of your business because I will also accept the risk of what you're saying is acceptable. Whereas in my heart, I'm really wanting to do more, but I understand the business side of that.
But would you say economic downturn means open season for hackers to go after companies that slash down security budgets?
So when I've seen things go through for a bit, so when we had the housing kind of crash stuff, because the like will always find an opportunity wherever there is one. So when companies are investing less, of course, they're going to be pushing on that. If you look at the market, there's more money to be made in doing the bad than there is actually doing the good. So in a market where that is the driver and the motivator of the industry, driving the buying kind of decisions, when people are spending less, is obviously going to give more opportunity to the bad side of the economy, or the economy, to be making more money. Maybe it's a bit of a balance as we go through the different cycles where we're in high growth. A lot of companies spend a lot of money on security, making it so much harder. When we're in a downturn, people are spending a lot less money on security. And then in that sense, hackers are then making more from ransom and the like. And maybe that'll then become, again, into the news a lot more often, a lot more data breaches that are happening, which will then in turn drop more investment later down the line. It seems to be a bit of a game.
Looking back the last couple of years, let me ask you a final question. If I would have a time machine and could send a postcard to the 5 years younger Cameron with a warning of what to do and what not to do, what would you write on that postcard?
I feel I had the warning, but I didn't listen to it. In my MBA that I finished a year before the pandemic, a lot of what we were learning was around the environment. So that's that volatile, uncertain environment. So it's actually, my letter and my postcard would be, push yourself outside of your comfort zone as much as possible in different ways to become a more rounded individual who's more comfortable experimenting. Because then actually, instead of doing the same thing over and over again, which I see a lot of people doing, a lot of companies doing, still trying to do the same playbooks from 10, 20 years ago. And we're in this environment now, it's completely different. I would put that on there of like, push yourself, because I think it starts with that, right? To be able to be valuable in a VUCA environment, you need to be flexible. You need to think outside the box. You need to push yourself every day by doing new things and things. I would have probably doubled down and say, when they said about practice it, actually practice it.
Yeah.
I think I've been lucky enough to
Practice.
consulting,
Yeah.
but to myself and all the other peers and everyone that I've worked with, then I would have been like, to sit and spread the word, because if you can do it and someone else can do it, we're all going to benefit as a global economy versus the localized or personal based financial.
Yeah. So it makes total sense. It is being outside the box. Cameron, thank you for coming here. All right, everyone. That brings us to the end of this episode of Speak Revenue. I want to thank our guest, Cameron Johnson, for joining me today and sharing his insights. Huge shout out to all our listeners. Your support means the world to us. Please remember to check out our website at speakrevenue.com for a full transcript and additional resources. And if you enjoyed the show, please, with a lot of sugar on top of it, go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you go for your listening needs, and leave us a great review with 5 stars and all bells and whistles. And please follow us on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Insta, and wherever you can find us. We'll be back soon with another great guest. Till then, stay curious, keep listening, stay safe, and I talk to you soon. Thanks.